Welcome back to the Something in the Wilderness podcast, a music discussion podcast about all the songs of Andrew McMahon, one song per episode. Today, we're glad to bring back a returning guest to the show. The last time he was on the show, we talked about probably one of the most popular Andrew McMahon songs in the modern era, or at least from a live show standpoint. But today, we're going back a little further, and I think a little deeper too. Our guest, Andrew Ware, also competed recently in our Dear Jack Andrew-themed trivia earlier this month, which was a lot of fun. So, Andrew, thanks for being part of the podcast and donating to Dear Jack, and I know you're part of a team on your own, but also thanks for becoming my friend these last couple of years.
Yeah, thanks for having me back, Steve. That trivia was a blast. That was so much fun. So glad I did that. And I'm just glad to be back on the podcast and talk about our favorite artist. Yeah, great year fundraising wise for everyone. It was
amazing.
Yeah.
Over $100,000 more than what they were shooting for, right? Is that what I saw?
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, I had fun. It was my first time ever being directly involved in the fundraising. Diane and Dawn invited me to be part of their team. I was very grateful for the invitation and just to, come into that world and see if I could help out just a little bit. But yeah, I know you've been busy in the last year. Besides all that, I know you have a young daughter, and I'm sure that's kept you and your wife very busy.
Yeah, to say the least. She's all over the place now.
Oh, you said she's mobile, right?
Yes, running all over, walking all over. Yeah.
That's like a whole new world, a whole new dimension, in my opinion. So my kids are older, but I remember that era, and we have all these videos. I'm sure you take a lot of videos of it, too. We have all these videos, and the kids love watching them even now. My 10-year-old was just watching what she calls the baby show today, and it's her as a baby.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, speaking of her and Andrew, she was going to make her debut in St. Louis, but she doesn't do car rides, and my parents are actually going to come down and stay with her while we go to St. Louis to see Andrew, waiting a little bit longer before her first concert.
Oh, yeah, she's pretty young. You went to see Andrew recently. Where was it, Nashville?
Yes, Nashville. And actually, so we're recording on Sunday, the 19th. I saw him on Wednesday. So super recently, yeah.
So we decided not to talk about details of that show on this episode, and we are going to get back together in a couple of weeks and talk about the details of the set and what that was like to see him again and all of that. In general, how was it? Did you like it?
I mean, it was amazing. He was just electric as usual, and Zach is recording his own music, isn't on this tour with him, but he was in Nashville and came out for a few songs, and so that was really special. Got to see him after the show. Did VIP, so I got to meet Andrew before the show, go to sound check, which was really cool. And Andrew, being the most gracious human being in the world, actually, I hung at the end of the VIP line with Stewie Stewart, who a lot of you know, and we waited, and Andrew was gracious enough to sign all of my vinyl collection. I left the Wilderness stuff at home because I actually want to replace a few of those before I get him to sign them. One of the covers is meant, stuff like that. But I took all of Stuff the Corporate through Jack's Mannequin, and he was gracious enough to sign it. He was like, oh, it's totally fine, like just so cool about it. And then just sat there and conversated with us. I actually asked him a question about something that was brought up on the podcast. So that was fun.
I love that you did that, by the way. Thanks. I feel flattered by that.
So you mentioned on the Kavanaugh Park episode on the podcast that song, an instrumental version of that song, appears in an MTV series, Making the Band, with the band O-Town. I guess they formed together in one. I never watched the show, so I don't really know. But
yeah, it is how they basically auditioned like in kind of an American Idol style, each of the people, and then by the end of the show, they were the five in O-Town.
Yeah. So on the last episode, they feature the whole song of Kavanaugh Park instrumentally, which is...
Yeah.
So not only is it like this super deep cut, like Kavanaugh Park is not a common, it's a deep cut on Leaving Through the Window. Originally appeared on Ready Break. And I told him incorrectly that it aired in 2001, and then talked to you, and you said actually it aired in 2000. So
Yeah. September of 2000.
September of 2000. So a little over 2 years before Leaving Through the Window was finished. Not only is it like this deep cut, not only is it an instrumental version, I would imagine that Something Corporate didn't record a instrumental version of that song. Maybe they did, but most likely somebody went in, took the vocals out, and gave it to MTV's Making the Band. Andrew mentioned that he had a producer that was associated with MTV back in the day around that
Okay.
time, so that's probably how it got on there. But Coach House Records is what Ready Break, or is who recorded Ready Break, which has, I looked on Discogs, had 7 records to their name. So
Okay.
this super small label did not hand this record to MTV and was like, hey, play one of our artists, because obviously MTV probably
Right.
doesn't even know who Coach House Records is. So obviously someone very
Sure.
closely connected to Andrew and connected with MTV got this track to be played, over 2 years before its official release.
I assume they were in the process of recording. So, yeah, it is interesting that. So, Andrew's response was that he didn't even know it was in there, right?
Yeah, he didn't. He was like, "What? It was on Making the Band."
I'm unsure of whether he's just forgotten, which is very possible. I've forgotten a lot of things that happened in 2000 as well, or he truly didn't know and somebody used it. But hey, just putting a plug in for Andrew and the guys. I feel like there should be some royalty paycheck from that. So that's just my opinion, but maybe someone out there feels differently. I mean, you got a song on a TV show, usually get something for that, but I don't know. It's weird. So let's talk about the song at hand here. When this album that we're going to talk about dropped, I remember my wife and I had just had our first daughter, so we were kind of closer to the position that you and your wife are in now. And we had just bought our house in a community where we didn't know anybody, and life was kind of crazy. Frankly, it was kind of a blur. But I do remember downloading this album on iTunes, paying on iTunes for the album, getting it on my computer, and then burning it onto a CD so that I could play in my car. Because apparently that's what people still did back then. It seems like so long ago now that people did that, but that's what we did, I guess, just 12 years ago, back in 2011. But I remember this song, Television, that we're going to talk about, as a unique song across the album. It was just kind of a standout, like, hey, what's this one? This has a different sound. Television was by Jack's Mannequin. It was track 3 on People and Things, and it was released on October 4th, 2011. The song does come in the track list right after the 2 singles that were released to promote the album. So, Andrew, where were you in your life when this song first found you?
I had People and Things when it came out on CD. I couldn't exactly tell you when that was. 2011 obviously is when it came out, but I don't know when I had the Best Buy version with the bonus tracks on it. I remember that because I remember Out of It, because he swears so little in any of his music. So I remember listening to the CD. Then I remember probably roughly around that time is when I first got Spotify.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember Spotify, I was like, oh yeah, he's like, there's a song he cusses in. And then the album ended and I was like, oh, where'd that song go? And then I realized it was a Best Buy bonus track. And in a lot of ways, even though I was in my mid 20s in 2011, trying to think of maybe not mid, but I was really young for that album. That album did not make a lot of sense to me. I liked it, but it wasn't it didn't hit me immediately. Actually, I think I ended up selling the album later, but it wasn't a standout album for me at the time.
Mm-hmm.
However, to full disclosure, People and Things is my second or third favorite album from Andrew. Transit being first, and then Tilt at the Wind No More. I don't know if it's second or third. I don't think anything will ever truly take down everything in Transit, although at the time when Tilt came out, I said it was my favorite album, and I just felt the emotion of it, and was just man, this album just stands up on its own and stands the test of time. There's nothing that's faded for me on this album even a little bit. So just a plug for the new album if you haven't listened to it. But People and Things, I remember when I was older, I really started to appreciate like what a masterpiece the album was as a whole. Songs like Restless Dream, People Running, Television, Casting Lines. The album as a whole for me talks a lot about like relationship, and I know we're going to talk about the album trailer, but I think Andrew I'd never seen that until I watched it right before we recorded, and I was like, man, this kind of like sums up the album for me. It's a very personal, deep album. Andrew talks about starting over on it, which is really interesting because you wouldn't necessarily think of a third album from a band as starting over.
That one shocked me as well. Like the idea, like we've seen Andrew start over several times, and People and Things is not where I would have called that at, but that's how he perceived it, right?
I was really taken back by that. I was like, oh, it's a very mature album. I think a lot of Andrew fans agree with that, and the conversation I hear on that album is it's a grown-up album. It's an adult album. It's not Transit. It's not even in a lot of ways Glass Passenger. In a way, I think it really marks like the bridge to the Wilderness era in a really unique way.
Agree completely.
I think that, again, I had to be older to appreciate that. And part of my story, as shared last time, is like being sober and like growing up. It really in the past 6.5 years in ways I never have, that album becomes more and more important to me in a lot of ways, just because it is so raw and real. And Andrew was writing the next chapter in a lot of ways, the next step, I guess. And I think that's what he means by starting over. If obviously only he can know what that means, but
yeah, fresh perspective. Yeah, I think you're right. So you would say that getting sober and that lifestyle adjustment that you made helped you appreciate this album more then?
I definitely appreciate it. Like later I'm going to share a poem that came out of a time period in my life when I was not sober, although the poem was written later, but a relationship. And Restless Dream was like the song I think People and Things as a whole got me through the breakup, but Restless Dream in particular got me through the breakup. So it definitely was not just getting sober, because that was before that, but I had to reach a point of just being older and being able to look back at things. I think in a lot of ways, like speaking for myself and probably for a lot of people, when you're in your early 20s and even your like mid 20s, like you're kind of just, nobody can really tell you what to do, right? And I think Andrew touches on that with saying that the cancer stole his youth, and nobody can really tell you what to do, and you still think you know everything, and then you get older and you're like, I have no clue what I'm doing. I don't know anything. And I think when I reached that point, I was like, this album speaks to that and to me in such a deep, unique way.
It made more sense then?
Yeah, that only Andrew can write, it seems like.
Capture, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting. You've described on this podcast multiple times about Andrew being like the soundtrack to your life, and in so many ways, I feel the exact same way.
I know we relate on that level with this music, how growing up with this music, as Andrew's grown in his music, we've been growing up, and we can understand these different time periods or eras of his life in the context of our own. On the song, so the lineup was different than what Jack's Mannequin had been prior to this, in a sense. So we have Andrew McMahon on vocals, piano, percussion, and keyboards, Bobby Raw on guitars, also Tim Pierce on guitars, which I'll come back to him, Jay McMillan on drums, so that's expected, and percussion, Jamie Mahubarak on keyboards, and I think he played on most of the album as well, and then Chris Chaney of Jane's Addiction on bass, whom I mentioned earlier. So I went to a concert this past Friday night, and I just saw Chris Chaney's name on a poster, and I didn't realize that he was a member of Methods of Mayhem, which is how he knew Tommy Lee, which is, I assume, where the Andrew connection comes in, right? Because Tommy Lee played drums on Transit. Now Chris Chaney played bass on People and Things at this point, and those two guys were in a band together. I don't know much about Methods of Mayhem, but I don't think it sounds anything like any of Andrew's music. I'm just gonna take a guess out, stab at that. I think it's more hard rock, if I remember correctly. But anyway, I saw a poster at a show just the other night of Methods of Mayhem, and both their names were on it. I thought that was cool, like Tommy Lee, Chris Chaney, and
cool.
help me make that connection again. Like, oh yeah. But Tim Pierce is a session guitarist still. And he's played on a lot of stuff that everybody's heard of. But a few songs that probably everybody would know listening is Don't Dream It's Over by Crowded House, which is an 80s pop song. Black or White by Michael Jackson, came out in the early 90s. And then mid-90s, Iris by Goo Goo Dolls. Tim Pierce has done a hell of a lot more than what I just named. You better sit down if you're going to look at his resume because, like, it's long. You can look it up on Wikipedia. I'll actually drop it in the show notes. He's basically one of those guys that a lot of artists that we know have brought in to do guitar on their album. But producers on the track include Jim Scott, Andrew himself, Rob Cavallo, and then Bobby Ron and Jay McMillan were co-producers actually on this track, as well as several others. So, do you remember? So let's talk about live shows a bit. Do you remember when you and I met in Pontiac, Michigan, June 2021? Did you remember that they played this song? They played Television?
Yes. It was the only time I've ever seen it live.
So I was going to ask you, was that a pretty special moment then?
It was really special. I'd seen it. I saw it on the set list the night before, and I was really hoping they were going to keep it. Because I know sometimes with deeper cuts, sometimes it's a request, or somebody happens to be at a show one night, so they're not going to play it the next and stuff like that. So I was really, really excited to see that they did it, and I was hoping they would keep it. And yeah, that's the only time I've ever seen it live, and it was extremely special. I can believe it.
Yeah, you guys had a pretty front and center view, if I remember correctly,
from
where you were standing and for that one. And I was shocked looking back. Now, I do remember that. I don't always remember specific songs in concerts, but I do remember that, probably for a similar reason to what you do, is that I'm like, oh my gosh, they're playing Television. And I was fortunate to go to both nights of those pod shows, and I was doubly shocked when they played it both nights. So I'm like, my God, like they're playing this deep cut that I've never heard in concert before, and I didn't know they even play in concert, and they're playing it both nights. But I have a pretty firm memory of that myself. According to Setlist FM, Jack's Mannequin only played it 47 times ever, but that kind of makes sense. Like, that's actually a lot, because Jack's Mannequin was only a band for like another year after this album came out.
Yeah.
47 times in a year is actually a lot. And then it's been performed solo by Andrew 16 times, and then that was mostly between Jack's Mannequin and Wilderness era. And then he's performed it 11 more times that I know of as the Wilderness. Honestly, I haven't paid too much attention to setlist lately, but I did look up to see if it had been played recently. The last time it's been played live that I found was the May 2023 shows. He actually played it twice, I think, at two of those shows. One of them may have been Milwaukee, if I remember correctly.
Oh, wow.
So he did play it in this year. Maybe he'll be playing it again soon. So I don't know if you've Googled or you've searched on YouTube, but there's not too many live videos of this song out there. I don't know, unless I didn't dig deep enough.
That's nuts. You would think there'd be more.
I found one from 2012. Again, the solo, one of the solo shows probably, or maybe it was like late Jack's Mannequin possibly. I don't know, the sound quality wasn't great. I put it in the show notes so people can check it out. But I gotta believe there's like a more recent one. I'm gonna try to find one, and if I do, I'll put that one in the show notes too.
Yeah, I watched it. The sound quality was not great. The sound quality was so bad. I thought it was a cover, because I think it says Jack's Mannequin cover on it or something weird on the description. And I was like, oh, this is a band covering it. That's cool. I was like, who's covering Television? Like, checked. And then I was like, oh, it's Andrew. I was like, this sounds like the lights are dark at first. I was like, this sounds exactly like Andrew. And then I was like, oh, it is Andrew.
This guy does a really good version of Andrew, huh?
I felt kind of silly, but
No, but the sound quality was not great. Yeah, warning out there. So, but
I'll have to look. I think I recorded it. I'll have to look and see if I.
Oh, that would be great. I would love to see that. I don't know how much video I have of that. I might have some, but probably not that song. My wife and I each took a couple video clips, but yeah, and that was live streamed, so I did buy the live stream, so I watched it through once, but I would love to see that show again. So if you do have any video, I'd love to see it. So I also had the chance to hear this song live on the Rock Boat 2021, which is just a few months later, 5 months later, after we saw it in Pontiac. But I honestly don't even recall seeing it there. I had to look at Setlist FM to find out that I actually saw it. I just think the Rock Boat, I saw so many concerts that week. I really enjoyed myself, don't get me wrong, but like I just feel like some of that information in my brain got lost because I saw Andrew McMahon perform 4 times in a week, plus like 15 other artists. So I don't actually remember that, but it's just ironic that I remember them playing Television very vividly at the pod shows in Pontiac that year. Last time we recorded a song episode, when we talked about Fire Escape last year, I remember you telling me that you had never seen Jack's Mannequin live, right?
Yeah.
I'm curious, do you wish that they would show People and Things more love in the set list these days?
Yes, I do. I've seen Amy I a couple times during soundcheck, which is really cool. Yeah.
That's a great, actually one of my favorites total. Like I love that song.
I think he played Amelia Jean at 3 pianos during soundcheck, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, that's awesome. That's another great one. Yeah, so you've seen a few People and Things tracks performed live. I have too. Like they played Restless Dream on the Rock Boat, and I definitely remember that because that was a very special moment. Yeah, I don't, but I haven't seen a whole lot of People and Things era stuff in concert. I don't know what it is about that album, but yeah, it'd be nice to see a little bit more of that. Maybe I know in May they really varied up the set list. So I'm hoping, again, without knowing anything, I'm crossing my fingers. I'm hoping they're varying up the set list a little bit night by night on this tour. So, and maybe I don't know, maybe we'll get something surprising.
Yeah, I saw Restless Dream too. I think it was Pen and Piano where he played it with Bobby, and I think you said when I listened to your Rock Boat episode, you were talking he played it with Bobby. That one's really fun because I think you said they did this on the Rock Boat, like him and Bobby come out in the crowd during it.
Yeah, Andrew was kind of just sitting on the edge of the stage.
Yeah,
and then Bobby stayed back, but it was definitely fun to watch.
A lot of fun. I wish they would do that one more together. I think it's really cool.
So you may not know this, but Television was apparently played on one of Andrew's live streams in 2020, which I never saw it, by the way. I found out it was a paid-for one. It was a Zoom that I didn't have access to. So I think it was like for a charity event.
Yes, you referenced that. You've referenced it a few times during the podcast, and I always wonder why didn't I... Because I would have paid for it, right? And
yeah,
I think
I would have.
I
think I would have too.
Like I would have paid for it, and it must have just been like a private. Maybe
That's
was
what
a
I'm
Dear
thinking.
Jack.
By invite only or something.
It's so weird if it was a Dear Jack like Zoom, because one of the prizes has been a Zoom with Andrew.
Mm-hmm.
But what is so surprising to me about that is that somebody took the time to put that on Setlist FM. Somebody was really dedicated to do that.
Yes, it sounds like something I would do, to be honest. Yeah, somebody did put that, and that's the only reason I know that existed. That's the only reason I know which songs they played, because they played. I've referenced this before because he played As You Sleep, and that's one of my favorite Soko songs. But I did post on the Andrew McMahon fan Facebook group, and somebody responded and said it was like a Life Matters or Lifelong or Live Long Matters event. So I couldn't find any information on that charity, but apparently it was a charity event you paid to get into. Again, I didn't know about it until after the fact. I would have been really interested to see what Television sounds like, just Andrew in a room playing on the piano. So.
Yeah, me too.
Because as we'll get into, it's so based in guitar, a lot of it. So that's a lot of the song to me. Like I said, it doesn't get too much love in the set list, but it's cool that we've both caught it live.
Yeah, at the same show, which is cool.
Yeah, at the same show, which doesn't happen very often. We definitely need to get to a show together again. It just hasn't worked since a year ago, but we will.
Yeah,
we'll get back there. So let's talk songwriting. McMahon stated that he had some early demos and versions of songs before this album that he basically scrapped and started fresh. And he did use some of those demos and kind of piece things together and they some of them eventually made it through to the album. But my understanding is he pulled in Jay and Bobby, and they kind of like fleshed out these songs together, which, listening to this particular song, Television, it definitely sounds like a full band, fleshed out. There's definitely different parts. It's not all just piano and then built around that. At least it doesn't sound like it to me. Had you ever heard of this guy Jaron Johnston that he co-wrote it with?
No, when he mentioned that, because I watched that, I immediately thought the only other Jaron I'd ever heard of was Evan and Jaron, and I thought, oh, maybe
yeah.
it's that guy, but it's not. I've never heard of this guy.
It's not. Yeah, okay. I didn't even make that connection. You're right. But Jaron Johnston was in American Bang, which was like a pop rock band, and then he is now in a country group called the Cadillac 3. And I don't know. I heard Andrew say that it was like an experimental writing session, so I don't know how well they know each other. It might have just been like one of those pairings that I've heard about in the industry where it's like, hey, you two should get together and write a song. Or if it's like they were friends and they were like, hey, let's just try writing a song together. I wasn't really sure how that came together, and I'll probably never know the answer to that. Yeah, I always find it interesting in that space where someone like Andrew is like, I wrote this one song with this one person one time. As far as anything that's been released anyway by Andrew, they haven't written anything else together. So, but they did write this one song. So, to me, this song has a really unique sound.
Yeah,
compared to his other stuff.
I think that's why I like it so much.
And we'll get to the sound of it specifically in a second, but I feel like it's different from anything else on this album and anything else that they recorded for Glass Passenger or even Everything in Transit, which does make it, a pretty unique song in the catalog. But just a little bit more about songwriting. I think we both agree this is like a relationship song on a relationship album. My interpretation, like as the theme in general, is that it's like going through a rough time in a relationship and maybe needing a break from the stress of it all. What do you think?
Absolutely. I think it's interesting because every time I've heard Andrew talk about this song, and I think I've heard him talk about it more than just on the intro, because I think he talked about it in Pontiac. I can't remember if he talked about it in Pontiac, but I definitely have heard him kind of expound upon it, and it's always just, it's about sleeping with the television on. I'm like, is it though? Sometimes I wonder if he deflects some of his more personal stuff because, just as we all do, no fault to him for doing that at all. This is it's about distraction when I hear it. Like, that's why, when I intro the poem, I'll talk more about this, but like, that's kind of where the inspiration came from. The song is about like distraction. It's possibly about, he said it's not about a breakup per se. It's about a rough patch in a relationship. But I think it could very easily be interpreted as a breakup or things ending. The lyric "move the needle to a more forgiving song." Mm-hmm. The idea that things are not good, things are not going okay in the relationship, and he doesn't really know how to get out of that other than distracting himself by sleeping with the TV on. So he's distracted. He's not alone with his thoughts. That's what I think about.
Yeah.
Whenever I hear that.
I agree. It's not about a breakup. It's about a relationship where two people are either trying to work something out or they haven't worked it out and they don't know what's next. And he's just, I guess I'm sleeping with the TV on to distract myself. This Fuse interview I'm going to post in the show notes. It's a video interview, but he said he's always tried to be honest with where he is in his life, which is I think why you and I relate to the lyrics as he's grown, because he wrote songs about being young and carefree early on, and then he wrote about his cancer treatment and diagnosis and just kind of working through the issues, the emotional issues that came with all that. And now on this album, he's writing about, okay, I've been married for a few years. What's that like? What's it like to build a life with somebody and figure out who you are in that relationship? So who am I individually, as we all have to figure out? Who am I individually? Who am I in this relationship also? And how does that impact the other person? And there's going to be ups and downs in every relationship. I'd be worried if someone said that they never have a disagreement in their relationship, right?
Yeah.
So we all have it. Anyway, I'll link that in the show notes.
I think it's interesting too on the perspective of the song, given what a lot of people and things was written, the perspective was written from. is from this trip that he takes, running away from everything. And he talks about it in the book. Plug for the book if you haven't read it or listened to it. I suggest listening to it as well. He takes a trip. He leaves Kelly behind, and she wonders if he's coming back, or wonders if they're still going to be together when he comes back. And he talks about the trip. The song Amelia Jean is directly about the trip. But he talks about finding himself, and he needed to get away, and then he ends up putting himself into an extremely dangerous situation. I believe it was Mexico. I can't remember. But he finds himself in a situation, and then he realizes that he has to come back home. And he knew he shouldn't go. He knew that because he ends in West Virginia on the trip, and he knew he should go home, and he shouldn't go with his friend out of the country, but he does anyway. And it's just interesting when you think about television being about distraction and about reflection and about how do we make things work when things are really bad, and can we make those work? Because I truly believe he was asking, Kelly asks, I think he says that Kelly calls him and asks him if they're getting divorced, and he says no. But I have to believe he was asking himself the same questions on the trip. Mm-hmm. In that perspective, in the light of television, it's about, as we said before, just distraction and what that means. And I think it's a song that you connect with, whether you're out of a relationship, in a relationship, or whatever. It's about, are we actually going to do it? And this is where, like, the connection that you mentioned, I think you'd be worried if, a couple didn't fight and didn't have disagreement and didn't have turmoil, because the simple fact is that two humans trying to coexist together is going to create tension.
Right.
The idea that Andrew is talking about not being a newlywed, which is interesting, 4 years into marriage, it's not exactly new anymore. And the idea that he's talking about things that are really, really poignant in any relationship, I think it's why I connect with it, why you connect with the song so much. It's he's really talking about much bigger things than just the distraction of the television being on at night.
I can picture that, and I've experienced it myself, just to get a little personal. Like, obviously, yeah, my wife and I have had disagreements, and I could see that, like, and typically on any night, any given night anyway, I stay up and watch TV at night, and we don't have a TV in our bedroom, but we do in the living room, obviously. And so usually, like I said, on a normal night, I'd stay up later anyway. But I could see that, like, having a disagreement, and I'm just sitting in front of the TV, kind of reflecting on what happened and how we move forward from there. So it's very easy to identify with the larger theme, but also at its most basic level, what kind of the lyrics say that this song is about. So it sounds like you can relate to the overall theme of the song too.
Definitely. I think anyone whether a new partner, an old partner, can relate to this. It's funny, as you talk about, you're sitting there with the television on, and you're rehashing everything, and you're thinking about things, and you're trying to figure it all out. The television truly isn't the distraction that you think it is. And I think that's what Andrew's touching on in the song too, is that the television really isn't distracting him, but he's still sleeping with it on. The chorus might be about the TV, but the verses are about everything that's surrounding why he needs that TV to be on.
I do, before we get into lyrics, I'd like to talk about the sound of it a little bit more. So I mentioned earlier, I asked you, Andrew, did this song sound different for you than other songs in the catalog? And you had said yes. So was this like, do you remember hearing the song around the time the album came out, or maybe later when you kind of rediscover the album and thinking, wow, this is just like, this sounds different than the other songs? Because that was my reaction. When I first heard it, I was like, oh, this is cool. This sounds like Andrew, sounds like, oh, this song sounds different. I liked it. Did you have any thoughts like that when you heard it?
Yeah, it's a standout track. I think in a lot of ways it gets into like the heart of the album. I think it's probably why it's the third song. Mm-hmm. And it does. It starts very differently. It starts very guitar heavy, very full band heavy. the album as a whole is a lot of that. You have, and you go into Amy I, and then hey we're all gonna die, and then People Running. That group of songs is just kind of really unique, I think, in the Jack's Mannequin whole Andrew catalog, but really unique in the Jack's Mannequin catalog. You have a more of a shift away from like the pop punk of something corporate, and then everything in transit, and you had more of that sound on Glass Passenger, but you really see this kind of like where he's really trying to shift his music. And I think this song kind of kicks it off with like this like real heavy intro. Even the melody is very intense from the first lyric.
Oh yeah.
Running around the spiral, it's our choice now. Up or down, the days can seem so long. And I know we'll get to lyrics in a minute, but like just like the heavy intro into what are some pretty poignant and heavy lyrics.
You're right. It's very dramatic. It's a very dramatic intro, like a very extended dramatic intro, which I do love that about this song. Something I never would have picked out on my own, but I read this review that I'll link in the show notes from 2011, and I'll just pick out one tiny thing the guy said. The author of this article from Sputnik.com mentions that Andrew introduces electronic elements into some of the songs. An example the example that he gives is the intro, the very beginning notes of Television. And two thoughts there. One, I never really thought about it being as electronic, but then it's ironic when we now have experienced the Wilderness era, even the solo EP before Wilderness, and then moving into the Wilderness era, Zombies on Broadway, Tilt to the Wind No More, and we have plenty of electronics going on. But looking back, the Television does not feel like anything electronic, but apparently the opening note, some of that is electronic, like that tick, 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 tick sound. I don't know if I thought it was a guitar, but I don't know. But it's not something I ever thought about. But I tell you what, in the last few weeks since we decided to talk about this song soon, I've listened to it a lot, as I do with most of these songs that I talk about on the podcast. And there's some things I'm noticing about this song that I didn't notice before. But I'm going to back up for a moment, and I'm going to tell you something that I did notice from the moment I heard it, and I still think about it every time I hear this song. And it's not a bad thing, but I'm going to name a band that you may or may not like. I think they're somewhat divisive. They've been around for like over 40 years, and some people love them, some people, I guess, hate them, and there's people like me who kind of like some of their music, I guess. But every time I hear the guitar in this song, this band comes to mind, because this band's guitarist has a very distinct sound, and a lot of this band's sound comes from the sound of this guitar. But the guitar in Television sounds so much like this band to me. So the band I'm talking about is believe it or not, U2. I think of The Edge, who's the guitarist there for U2.
I can see that.
And it's like he uses this reverby, kind of echoey, epic, anthemic, arena sound, which fits in really well with a lot of U2 stuff. And it fits in really well with Television, in my opinion. I like this song a lot. But I've never been able to get that out of my head. To take it just one step further, I'm a big Our Lady Peace fan. And Our Lady Peace, in my opinion, sounds nothing like U2. And they sound nothing like any of Andrew McMahon's projects. But they have one song that does the same thing. And so I don't know the name of the song. I'm not going to try to compare the two. I don't know. I don't know why U2 seems to have trademarked this sound in my brain. I don't know. Do you think there's any merit to that? Or I don't know how familiar you are with that band, though.
Yeah, actually, I really liked U2 in middle school.
Uh-huh.
And still enjoy some of their stuff. But at work...
That's kind of where I am, too.
At work, we play them. And as soon as you said that, I started hearing the riff on Where the Streets Have No Name. And I was like, yeah, that does sound very similar to this song. I immediately, when you started talking, I was like, oh, yeah, I can, because I hear that song probably every time I'm at work. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I can hear the similarity immediately as soon as you said that.
Well, I'm glad. I feel a little bit validated today, because I don't think I've ever had this conversation about this song with anybody else. And I just wasn't sure how that would be received by another Andrew McMahon fan. Like, what would somebody say? Heck no, that sounds nothing like you two. What are you talking about? Like, that's insane. But okay, I'm glad you at least hear some of the comparisons. But that song's a good call out. I think that's probably the specific song, if I had to guess, that's coming from, because that song's ingrained in my brain from my childhood. Like, that was I grew up to that kind of music. So
sorry, I'm sure we offended some of your listeners, but I agree.
I sometimes I throw things out there. I did that recently on the episode with well, no, I won't spoil it. You haven't listened to it yet, but
I love it when you do that, by the way. I love it when you're like, I think it, I'm like, I can, and usually, because we have similar tastes, I know the song you're talking about or the artist, and I'm like, I don't think I've ever, like, I probably would have messaged you and been like, oh, that's an interesting take, but, because...
Feel free. I would love that.
I
would be
agree with you.
More than okay with that, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would have been okay if you were like, no, that sounds nothing like you too. Because... that would have told me then, like, maybe it is just me, that like I have this association with it, and the reason why could be a million different things, but I don't know, maybe there is some merit to it though. What are some feelings that you associate with the sound of this song? Like when you hear it, like that, those opening notes, the build, the whole build up, what are some feelings you associate with this song?
Definitely dramatic, as you said, serious. He really wants to talk about something. He really wants to kind of just go for it. He has other songs like that in his library. Make no mistake.
Mm-hmm.
You have to think that he co-wrote this with somebody, and you got to think that they were like, let's just come in real heavy, and let's like lyrically, this is a heavy song. Let's come in and just immediately just like punch the listener in the mouth from the opening lyric and the opening intro. Let's not go with a long intro. Let's immediately get to it. Not that he doesn't use the space in his songs very well. Obviously, that's why we love him. But particularly this song, I don't feel like there's a wasted note or time in the song. It's very intentional. It's very thought out. I think whoever he wrote with, the Jaren guy, even though I don't know his other stuff, I'd imagine that is probably an element of some of the stuff he writes.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously there's an element of things Andrew writes too, but I think it's pretty cool that he collaborated with somebody who's like, let's take this to another level in a way. Let's really push this song, and the tempo and like the seriousness, and very like I said, serious and dramatic are the things that come to mind when I hear it.
Mm-hmm.
And very raw but clean at the same time, in a sense of like, it's very much like Andrew just comes in very strong on the vocals with some what I think are pretty powerful lyrics. So
yeah, and it's definitely a rock song. There's that big build, which I love, for like half or more of the song. And something that you said really reminded me of a thought I had a few weeks ago when I started like listening to this song on repeat a few times. When I listened to it that first time, and it was very intentional, so sometimes I'll listen in headphones, sometimes not. I think I was just sitting on my computer, and I put it on, and I'm like, I'm going to listen through to it, listen to the lyrics, listen to the way the song plays, and just kind of think about my thoughts on it after the fact, like kind of reflect on it afterward. And I was like, wow, that was a really short song, was my initial thought. That was just like, what is it, like 2 minutes? And I went back, and I don't remember the song length, by the way. It may be 3.5. I have no idea. But it wasn't 2 minutes. But it flew by. It feels like a very quick song, but it's not abnormally short for an Andrew song. But something you said made me think of that, how they use the spaces very well throughout the song from beginning to the end. I have a question for you that also came to mind when I listened on repeat to this song, because I don't know, like looking at the lyrics, which is where we're going to go next, where are the verses and what's the chorus? Because to me, like usually Andrew writes verse, chorus, verse, bridge, final chorus, outro. Typically, not always, which is pretty standard formula for a lot of artists. I couldn't pick that out here.
I agree. I can't pick one out either. I was thinking about that as you were talking about it being a rock song and just being very not wasting any time, and the build and everything you just said. I was thinking about it as you were talking about that, and in that regard, the closest thing you get to a chorus is the repeat of "I'm sleeping with my television on, I'm sleeping with my TV on." I don't see a clear cut chorus, and I also think that might also be intentional when he's talking about the song being about a relationship that's kind of gone wrong. Not wrong necessarily. Well, I mean, maybe it may be wrong patch. Too. Like, because I mean, the whole thing we talked about with the trip that he takes is it's a very tumultuous time in his relationship with Kelly. So in a lot of ways, I think one of the reasons that I relate to music so much is it doesn't resolve. A song doesn't resolve really. It just kind of ends, and it's not like a cute little bow that's wrapped. I mean, you do have some songs like that, don't get me wrong, but like,
not this song though. You're right about that,
right? And he's like, there's no chorus, it's just "with my TV on."
I never noticed that until just a few weeks ago, and I've been listening to this song for well over a decade, but I never thought about it too deeply. It's a song that would come on and I enjoy. That's what's so cool about doing this podcast. One of the many cool things, the best thing, of course, I've said this a lot, is talking to other people who love the music like I do, like yourself. But then secondarily, like, it gives me an opportunity to really dig in. It gives me a reason to really dig in and like notice these things I've never noticed before and appreciate the song in a whole new way. And sometimes I learn from other people, like some of the things I've learned from you today about your perspective on this. But yeah, that was just one thing I picked up on a few weeks ago. It was like, that's interesting. There's this build, and then there's a climax, and then it just fades away. But I really like that about this song. It almost feels like a transitional track between two songs on an album, but it's a full-length song.
It really does.
Yeah, and like I said, it goes by quickly enough where I would have thought that about this song. But let's talk about lyrics. So we've touched on this a bit already, but I'll say that the visuals I get of this song are obviously a man sitting on his couch, looking at the TV, and it's like a dark room. The glow of the TV is lighting his face and kind of some of the elements around him. We've all seen that in film and TV before, but that's kind of what I imagine. He's maybe being introspective. He's thinking about something he regrets or something he wants to change. Maybe he's kind of reevaluating where he is in his life. But I have to warn you, and this has already come up a little bit, I probably sometimes put some of myself into my interpretation of these lyrics. Because like I said, sometimes I feel like Andrew's writing the soundtrack of my life, right? You've heard me say that. And so I feel like I'm probably projecting a little bit on my interpretation of this song. So you might have to reel me in a little bit. But let me punt it to you. So what are some specific lyrics that are important to you in this one?
Yes, I also picture a guy by himself. Mm-hmm. Your colors dance beneath my bedroom door, implying that him and his partner are not in the same room together.
Right.
Yeah, I don't mind sleeping, not when there's flash and buzz. Again, I think that implies fighting. I don't mind sleeping with my TV on. Like, this whole idea of like just distraction. We talked about this, but particularly, I know I talked about it, but the opening, running around the spiral, it's our choice now, up or down, days can seem so long. Holy Ghost, I'm living with your voice now, but tonight I'm sleeping with my television on. Come tomorrow, they'll be hell to pay in clouds across the sun.
I love that line. That last line right there.
Yeah, me too.
Kills me. Yeah.
Me too. I actually got chills as I read that because it's like, damn, this is just such a good. And then also interesting, he doesn't, as you've talked about, he doesn't make a lot of religious references. So Holy Ghost is just a very interesting lyric. It's very unique. He doesn't use that imagery a lot at all. I think there's like
he doesn't. I think we've chatted about that before, haven't we?
Yeah.
About references to God, right? Yeah, you chatted me about that, and you said there is a couple other songs, and I didn't even pick up, even after reading these lyrics just recently, I didn't even pick up on that. That there'll be hell to pay and clouds across the sun. I love that because some of these lyrics are they're storytelling, like here's what's happening, and then you get this like ultra poetic line after that. It's like, tonight I'm sleeping with my television on, but come tomorrow, There'll be hell to pay and clouds across the sun. My interpretation of that is like whatever happened tonight, it's going to have some consequences tomorrow, and we might be living with that, darkness for a little while.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. The line cuts me a little bit.
Yeah, oh, definitely.
The other one that jumps out at me is actually the very next lines. This one cuts me pretty deep too. You were right, I've always been a sinner. You were right, I wasted all your time. It's a heartbreaking lyric to me because whether it's true or not, to be in a relationship and think that your partner feels that way about you enough to express that in song or out loud, that's heartbreaking to me.
Oh, definitely. I was actually gonna, before you talked about it, it's kind of the next line that's kind of just this whole, you were right, I wasted all your time is just such a powerful line. It's just a very, you're right, just like that you're talking about, like that a partner would say that to you.
Yeah, or just to think that that's how they feel about you.
Yeah.
I don't know which it is, or maybe it's both. I like the couple of references. I know you're a vinyl collector. So, you talked about getting your vinyl signed by Andrew earlier, and I know from being friends with you for a couple of years that you're a collector. And I love the references to the vinyl. Baby, we're a broken record. And then in the next kind of stanza, he says, and what if I could live like this, but not forever? What if you could, and you referenced this earlier, but I love this line. And what if you could move the needle to a more forgiving song? Comparing their feelings for each other, good or bad, to songs, a positive song or a negative song, or a forgiving song in this case.
Yeah.
But every time throughout this song, through all these lyrics that we're reading, every time he's returning to the television, he's going to sleep with the TV on, as if to say that, like, despite all these things, this is my comfort. This is where I'm going to return to, regardless of what happens here.
You went into the next part I was going to talk about, the Baby We're a Broken Record, turn around. I love, we're making sound, but only for the noise, is just like, again, man, what a line. I think anyone, again, can relate to this, of like, are we just spinning our wheels?
Yeah, like, is it, are we getting anywhere?
Yeah. Yeah, are we resolving anything? And I think he feels very unresolved.
Mm-hmm.
I think this song finds kind of like, it's in the middle of things that are like, it's not just one fight or one night or one thing that's been said. It's a whole just series of events. The spiral, it's our choice now. Like, there's a spiral that they're in
that they can't get out of, maybe. Do you have a specific favorite part of the song?
Yes, my favorite part, like, maybe not because I relate to it, but just the way the music built into it, is the You and I, Baby, We're a Broken Record, is just so, because the crescendo.
Mm-hmm. He starts, like, building up,
Yeah, is just so good.
I love that last, I don't know if it's the last. Yeah, I think it's the last time he says, but for tonight I'm sleeping with my television on. And then he goes into, I'm sleeping with my TV on. And that's like the kind of like climax in terms of the music. I love that. And yeah, I don't mind sleeping, not when there's flash and buzz. I love that, all of that part right there. Not necessarily for the lyrical content, but just I love the sound of the music. It, like, I feel like it's building towards something, and then we get that payoff there. It's so powerful at that point in the song. And I've always felt that way since the first time I heard it. Even though the guitar was unique to me from other things, it was like, it's always kept me paying attention, especially to that part, because I'm like, I want to see what they do next, And the drums come in really hard at that point, and the piano, it sounds like he's like banging on the piano at that point.
Yeah, he really gets, it's a rock song.
Yeah.
In that sense, he just gets into it.
Did you have a chance to watch the music? I guess it's not a music video, but like a short film for this song.
Yes.
For those who aren't aware, People and Things, every track on that album, on the main album of People and Things, had a short film to go along with it. And I'm going to say right now, I've dogged a few of these short films on this podcast because I just didn't feel like the content was fitting for the music. But I don't know. What do you think about this one, Andrew? I'm going to ask you first.
I agree. They're weird.
Yeah.
They don't really.
Yeah, like there's a claymation one. There's like a
sense.
random visuals and
A roller derby one.
Yeah,
Although
yeah.
apparently that one makes, like, when I listened to the episode about that one, I was like, oh, that actually makes more sense than I thought it did when I watched it for the first time. So I guess that. But this one was really interesting because it was almost like the closest thing to like, I haven't seen all of them, admittedly. I don't think. I might have at one time, but it's, I'd never seen them where the band was actually in it. Like, they weren't actually in it, but pictures of them, like Bobby, Andrew, and multiple pictures.
Marquise of the band of Jack's Mannequin.
Yeah.
Listed as the artist. Yeah, I feel like this was more of a music video.
Yeah.
I would call this more of a music video than what those other pieces of art were.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. I was really, really kind of like taken back because I was like, oh, I wonder what this, because maybe I had seen it and forgotten about it. But I was like, oh, I'm looking forward to seeing like what weirdness this one's gonna bring. But it was actually kind of like a music. That's what I thought too. Is like, oh, this is almost like a music video. That's interesting. I don't know if any of the other ones are like that, but really unique in the fact that, like, yeah, as you said, as we keep saying, a music video. The other ones kind of just are kind of more random. I don't know if like this is originally going to be a single or something, or I don't, it's interesting.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I was going to say if this song had been a single, this would have been an appropriate music video to me. I would have watched it and been like, yeah, that's a fitting video for this music. And so I do feel like whomever made this this video was actually listening to the song. I feel like it's a little bit more of the, we've talked a lot about from the male perspective, what Andrew wrote it from, of how he was feeling and using the TV as a distraction. I feel like this video was like the aftermath for the female perspective. It's like she's getting ready in the morning. I can't remember if she goes to work or like her puppy's on the bed while she's getting ready and going on with her day. And then I think there's kind of a nighttime drive at the end, but I could be wrong on that. I may be misremembering.
I think you're right.
But then intermixed in there, like you said, it's like pictures of the band, like really artistic photographs of the band. I really love it. And I got to say I have a soft spot for the dog in the video because the puppy reminds me of what our dog looked like when she was a puppy. We lost our dog earlier this year. She was 15 years old, and yeah, it was heartbreaking.
Yeah,
Still is.
yeah.
But this dog, it was nice because this dog reminded me of what my dog looked like when she was that age. So a long time ago, it was really sweet. So I was like, oh yeah, I recognize that dog. So let's also talk about the People and Things trailer. You mentioned that earlier. So what'd you think about that? You said that was the first time you'd ever seen it.
Interesting, very weird. I thought it was funny that what Andrew's saying is very serious, but the video is not serious at all.
It's like a goofy. They're doing something kind of goofy, right?
Yeah, they're jogging, which is really okay. I can kind of see it. But what the funny part is when his band joins him, Bobby and Jay appear to be, I think it's Jay, are dressed like in jogging clothes, and one of them's just in like jeans. And I'm like, did you not?
Yeah.
Did you not put some shorts on? Like, what?
Yeah.
Like, it's just so random. And then they get to the end and they're like winded, and I'm like, what? Like, I'm so confused. Like, I guess.
And then Bobby kind of like raised his hand, like cheering, like as if we made it. Like. I feel like they had a concept, and it may have been serious to start, but they had fun with it.
Yeah.
In the end.
Yeah. But what Andrew's saying is very serious. I'd never heard him.
It is. The voiceover is very serious.
Yeah. I've never heard him say any of that. I didn't know he hated Glass Passenger for a while, and then I didn't know that he had those feelings about People and Things as an album as a whole.
My guess as to what he meant about how he used to feel about Glass Passenger is he hated looking back at that because, this is just a guess, because it reminded him of all of those, the worst times of his life.
Yeah, yeah.
And a lot of that's in the music and weaved into the music, both lyrically, but also like when he hears it, he probably thinks back to those times. But yeah, that is how he said it though in the video. He's like, I hated that album for a while, and now I've come to love it. And now this is, like you said earlier, this new album's kind of a reset for me, which, again, not what I would have called People and Things, but I guess I could see that. Thinking about what he said, I had never known that existed before I did that episode with Lindsay about people running. I was like, oh, yeah, I didn't even know this existed. I kind of wish I would have seen that to get pumped up for the new album 12 years ago when it was coming out, but somehow missed all that. So
Yeah.
admittedly, I wasn't spending much time on YouTube back then, so I don't know where I would have saw it. So one last thing, just a fun fact, so I sent you a video of this song Television in Simlish. Apparently it was featured in Sims 3, and it was playing on you could play it on the radio, and the lyrics are in Simlish. Had you ever seen that before?
I knew that some of his stuff was featured in The Sims. I think like some of the High Dive, maybe. I'd never
Walking in My Sleep is the other one.
Walking in My Sleep. Okay, yeah. That was weird. It's just like,
yeah,
they scrambled random words.
So I'm not positive on how Andrew did it. There's a video out there, a YouTube video out there of Katy Perry doing a Simlish song, and she's literally singing the tune of Last Friday Night, but in gibberish. So I think they actually sing gibberish over their instrumental track. I'm not positive that's how Andrew did it, but there is a video of Katy Perry doing that. Try to imagine, Andrew, we're going to use one of your songs in The Sims. We just need you to sing gibberish in the tune of the song, Television, over the track, and then we're going to use it. I would love to see that on video like I did with Katy Perry's, because it was pretty entertaining. I'd recommend anybody look it up, even if you're not a Katy Perry fan, it doesn't matter.
Funny.
So I'm just trying to imagine Andrew in a sound booth singing gibberish. It sounds like that's what he's doing, because it doesn't sound digitized at all. I don't think they remixed his voice or played it backwards or something like that, because you'd be able to tell. But that was a fun one. Yeah. Check that out, and then Walking in My Sleep as well is another fun one to listen to. You said that you brought a poem that you were inspired to write. Can you tell me more about that? And then I'd like to hear it if you don't mind.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for letting me share it too. I really appreciate that. I drove up to Wisconsin to go to a Packer game. It was a really fun experience. But I listened to, I think, all of Something Corporate, all of Jack's Mannequin, and probably all of the Wilderness stuff. This was 2020, right before the world shut down. So everything that was out, I think I listened just through Andrew's discography on my drive up there. And People and Things always sticks out to me, but I think I really was just alone in the car, just thinking about it, and really kind of. So this album as a whole went through a breakup, and Restless Dream was kind of the theme song to that breakup. And this is kind of the last really serious, significant relationship I had before I met my wife. So I think a lot of people can relate to the last relationship they had before they met the person that they were supposed to be with was kind of a really unique relationship. It usually happens when you're older. It's usually very, very serious. The breakup is very serious.
I can relate to all that.
It's a very significant time period in your life. And even though you're with the person that obviously you're supposed to be with, and you love that person, you're happy with that person, sometimes you reflect back on
sure,
those memories and the scars, and those things still exist, right?
Yeah, it helped make you who you are.
Yeah, exactly. So I was listening to Television in particular, and the lyric that really stuck out to me was the part that I talked about. And maybe that is my favorite part of the song, more so because of this. But you and I, baby, we're a broken record. Turn around, we're making sound, but only for the noise. And what if we could live like this, but not forever? And what if you could move the needle to a more forgiving song? And what if this was never really broken all along? But for tonight, I'm sleeping with my television on. I just was, I guess, thinking about that. So I wrote this in 2021, but I actually edited it knowing that I wanted to share it on the podcast. I knew there was some stuff in it that I wasn't really satisfied with, and I changed some stuff around. Actually, this last week, some of it in line while waiting to go in and see Andrew. So kind of fun
nice.
With that. But
yeah,
definitely it's a reflective poem on the relationship, and it's pretty intense, very much like the song. I got to where I was going to my aunt and uncle's house, and I think even before, because I'd been driving, there was snow coming in, and so I left super early in the morning. It was an 8-hour drive 8 to 9 hour drive to get to their place from where I was living at the time. But I knew that I wanted to write I knew I needed to write something. I had to get something out onto paper.
Yeah. Sounds
And
like you felt really inspired on that drive, specifically from the song.
very much so.
Mm-hmm.
And it came out in probably 10 minutes. And obviously I edited it a little bit. But so this is what came out. And there's a line I do want to clarify that talks about not being able to remember the person's name. She used a shortened version of her name, and I was actually listening to another Andrew song, Cecilia and the Satellite, which was like kind of our relationship. Well, not kind of, it was our song. And I realized, I was like, I don't actually remember. And this is on the way to Nashville because I was thinking about the podcast and the poem. I was like, oh, I want to go back and edit that. And Cecilia was on, and I was like, I actually don't remember her full name. And I did later, but like it's kind of a harsh poem, just given that the relationship blew up. So anyway, wanted to clarify that line because it does sound very cold, and I guess that was intentional. But yeah, anyway, so yeah, I'll share it now. Tomorrow we can meet at a certain situation. Do you ever hate how hard it is when you work for something and then it's just gone? What if we would have never known each other? Would it have really been that bad? Songs wouldn't take me to that void even now, so long after the fact. You just acted like you weren't in pain. I think that's what kills me. I was left in the worst shape of my life, and you just moved on. You were cruel while I abided my time, careful not to do anything rash. Did you revel in my pain, or did you just not care? Cold indifference or bitter irony. I guess at this point, it doesn't matter. A waste of a year, and in 3 months it was all destroyed. Was it all just a game to you? See how long you could play it before I crack. And yes, I know it was my fault, but why the f*** did you make me keep holding on? I tried so hard to walk away. A broken down car in an empty hotel room, and a shit playlist that won't go away. I've stopped burning inside this memory, and I honestly can't remember your real name. And I can't think of a more fitting end for the twisted oblivion that never was.
Dang. Thanks for sharing, man.
No problem. No problem. Thanks for letting me share.
I love the fact that the poetry that you were listening to on the drive, because that's what music lyrics are, inspired you to write your own poetry in relation to what you've experienced. That's really powerful, really special.
Thank you. I appreciate that, man. I really do. Thank you for, again, letting me share. And it is interesting, as I was kind of introing that, I was like, it's really kind of like I realized that in the same way that the lyrics to this song are very just blunt, I realized a lot of that poem was very blunt. And I don't think I realized that until I went back and like started looking at it again. I was like, oh, this is very just kind of like cut and dry. I'm not trying to give imagery or anything. It's more of just like, this is how it is. And in television, it's like, this is kind of just how it is, yeah.
This is what happened, and this is how I feel about it. That's a great way to end it. That's a podcast first right there. Someone sharing their poetry in response to being inspired by, again, their experiences and Andrew's music. So that's really cool. With that, I mean, is there any final thoughts about the song we talked about or anything else? I know, like I said, we're going to be getting together in a couple weeks and talking about this New Friends tour, and I'm really looking forward to that too because I get to experience it. You've already experienced it, and we get to kind of compare notes in the different cities that we saw Andrew in, so that'll be fun.
Yeah, I'm really excited to get back together and talk about it. The only thing I can say is for the listeners that are going, check out Wilderness and Michigander. They are phenomenal openers. Like, I talked to Stewie, who went with me. I asked him, I'm like, did you like Floor and Grisfolk better or Michigander and Wilderness? And I know how many of us loved Floor and Grisfolk.
Mm-hmm.
I was exposed to their music for the first time ever on that tour and still listened to both those bands. And I can't pick which openers are better. Andrew said that they were the best openers he's ever had. So he loves them, which is really cool.
Mm-hmm.
I think one or both of them are going to be. I think Wilderness is going to be on the cruise, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct. Wilderness will be on the cruise next year. They were on the Rock Boat with him, which is where I believe they met 2 years ago.
Yes.
And they'll be on a cruise together in a year. So
They're really, really good. Their shows are a lot of fun, so definitely get there early and don't miss them.
I will. Thanks for the pro tip. Yeah, I'm familiar with Wilderness's music. I've never heard Michigander. I saw a clip on Instagram. Again, I was trying to avoid like tour spoilers, but I caught a clip of Michigander on Instagram, and they sound a lot like a band that I like here in Ohio called Motherfolk, and I've seen them a handful of times. That was just from that clip. I don't know if they really sound like that or not, but it kind of like the same vibe. But I'm looking forward to seeing both Wilderness and Michigander. So we'll get there early per your advice. So
Yeah, and this tour is just a lot of fun. You'll love it.
awesome! I can't wait. So going with my wife, my daughter, and a few of our local friends. So
Yeah,
it'll be
your
a
daughter's
good time.
going? That'll be cool.
My 12-year-old's going this time. I don't think my 10-year-old's going. They went last year to Deer Jack, but so this will be my 12-year-old's second show.
Yeah,
So,
that'll be cool.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it. Yeah.
Hopefully you don't have a long drive back.
No, we're just a half hour from 35 minutes from the venue. All right, well, as always, hit me up on Instagram or email me at somethinginthewilderness@gmail.com. Again, Andrew, thank you so much for being a part of the show, and we'll be talking in a few weeks about the New Friends tour, all right?
Sounds good.
All right, for tonight, I'm sleeping with my television on.